Welcome to the Indy Drills podcast. I'm Chad Wilson. It's been a while, but we're back. It's the off season for the players, and so I'm happy to be back. Want to be able to do these shows a little more frequently in season, but that gets a little bit difficult. Travel schedules, all kinds of different things, but looking to keep a more regular schedule when the season is in. But for most guys, it's the off season, definitely for all college football players, because we have now ended the college football season. In case you were under a rock, the Ohio State Buckeyes are the national champions in the first ever 12 team college football playoff. So happy to have that be done with and over with. They got through it, and after all of the back and forth people had with regards to, is this the right thing to do? Do we have the right amount of teams? Should we be doing this? Should we leave the old system? Everyone has an opinion on college football, but nevertheless, we completed the 12-team playoff, and by and large, man, I think it was a good exercise. I think it turned out to be a good thing. It beats anything else that we've had before. I would applaud the NCAA for making this move. I applaud them for moving to the 4-team playoff, and it's not often you're going to hear me applaud the NCAA for anything. But I will give them kudos for this. Obviously, there's some refining that needs to go on with the 12-team playoff in terms of the seeding and the automatic buys and things of that nature. I think we saw some of that. The two teams that had buys were underdogs in their games. So, and then we had a couple of teams that should have been able to play a home playoff game that weren't able to do that. But nevertheless, the moral of the story here is the college football season is over. And so those guys are in the offseason, high school obviously in the offseason. And there are only 4 teams in the NFL playing football right now. That is the Bills, Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Commanders. And they are going to jump into action on Sunday and boil this thing down to 2 that will play in the Super Bowl. So we are definitely in off-season mode. Gives me a chance to come in here and talk to you guys about some things. So if this is your first time watching the show, listening to the show, you go ahead and hit the subscribe button for you folks watching on YouTube, and hit the bell so you're notified the next time I put out an Indie Drills podcast like this. And like I said, trying to do this each and every week so you don't want to miss out on that stuff and drop some good nuggets here on the show. As always, the Indie Drills podcast is sponsored by 101 DB Tips. It is the ultimate defensive back reference guide. If you play defensive back or you're coaching defensive backs, you got to have this book right here. 101 of the best tips you're ever going to get on playing defensive back. And it's available to you right here in this book, available in either ebook version or the soft cover version of the book, as I have shown right here. And hey, a bunch glossy pages and the tips, man. We're here for the tips. Great tips, just about on everything: playing man coverage, playing zone coverage, playing nickelback, safety, corner, training in the off season, watching film, just about everything you can imagine. If you've got this book and you follow these tips, there's no way you're not going to be a playmaker. One way or another, you're going to be a playmaker. So go ahead and grab that. I'll have a link to it in the description down below. Whether you're listening to the show or watching the show on YouTube. So pick up a copy of 101 DB Tips if you have not had a chance to do that already. You can find this show on Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere that podcasts are put out. You can find it there. And of course, if you're watching me here on YouTube, you can find it here, right here on YouTube. So now that we've got that out of the way, stuff in the news. As I said, we crowned a national champion. There was a play there that was of interest to DBs in that game, late in the game. Notre Dame going cover 0 and putting a freshman corner one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith in that crucial situation. I'm one that's not quick to, question calls made by an offensive or defensive coordinator. I've been in both of those positions. I've been an OC, I've been a DC, and there's a lot of things that go through your mind in that moment. It's kind of easy for people to question calls sitting at home in the comfort of their home with a drink in their hand and everything going well. But doing it in the heat of the battle, I'm here to tell you, is a different thing. Now, maybe if you're a fan out there, you don't get it, you don't understand, you think I'm full of it. But the only way for you to know is to be in that position. Having gone through a whole week of practice, know the personnel that you have, having scouted the other team, being in that high pressure situation, having watched a couple of calls that you've made earlier in the game, either work or not work. All of these things are factors that are in your mind that come into that last call. So it's not always, we can always judge the call after the results have fallen out, and a lot of people do that. And it just seems so clear afterwards as to what should have been done. I'm here to tell you that's a difficult situation. I'll say this: Notre Dame's defense and Al Golden have relied on. They've been a cover zero team all season long. So they went with what it is that they know has worked for them all year. And if you're going to die with what brought you there. And he did that. Just maybe didn't factor as much into how much of a man child Jeremiah Smith is, and how any corner in college football would have had his hands full with that assignment. But nevertheless, when you call cover zero, you really need that. You need a free guy to get through there and really disturb the throw. And Notre Dame was not able to get that. And so the result ended up being a really, really big play to Jeremiah Smith that just pretty much clinched the game for Ohio State, got them way down into Irish territory, and they ended up kicking a field goal that put the game out of reach. I do break that particular play down from the DB's perspective. What went wrong for the defensive back in that situation? Of course, again, it's a tough situation to be in. Cover zero against the best wide receiver in college football. Nevertheless, there's something to learn from there. There were some things that could have definitely been done better, and I break that particular clip down as I do many others during the week. I broke it down in my All Eyes DB Camp members area, and I have a link to that down in the description below. By the way, if you are not in my brand new All Eyes DB Camp members area, you are cheating yourself. It's a cheat code, folks. If I had this as a player, if I had this as a coach, I would be so much further ahead than where I am now. I would have moved through. Who knows what would have happened? Who knows what kind of an all-star career I would have had? I have provided in there everything that I wish that I had when I was a player and as a coach. So if you're either one of those things and you're not in the All Eyes DB Camp members area, I'm telling you again, you are cheating yourself. And more than likely, someone you compete with or against is in there, and they're profiting while you're off to the side. So link will be down in the description for that as well. 101 DB tips plus the All Eyes DB Camp members area is a superpower combo. If you got that, you can't lose. Anyway, getting on to things here, they're as they do every year, come out with the Pro Bowl selections as well as the All Pro selections. I don't know how I feel about that. I typically am not a guy that goes for award shows. I have tweeted out about the Jim Thorpe Award. It used to be a good thing a long time ago when I was a really young man. It used to make sense. Maybe I was just young and naive then. But as I've gotten older, it just, the guys that they pick, the guys that they don't even nominate, just doesn't seem right. So I'm not a guy that watches the Academy Awards, the Emmys, the Grammys. That's just not my thing. I tend to think a lot of those things are very, very political. And every year you see the Pro Bowl rosters come out and someone got hosed and someone got in there that probably shouldn't have been in there. They're riding off of a time before. I kind of have noticed this about the Pro Bowl, especially, is you can have a good year, but they really want you to stack two of those years together, and they will defer your Pro Bowl if you're a new guy. All right, if you've done stuff in the past, you can kind of get grandfathered in. If I don't know if that's the proper word, but you can get put on a Pro Bowl roster off of reputation. But if you're new into this game and you're a young guy, they usually want to see you put a couple of seasons together before they give you that honor. Nevertheless, let's talk about the cornerbacks for the AFC for the Pro Bowl. That is Derek Stingley, Patrick Surtain, Marlon Humphrey, Denzel Ward. I mean, these are some of the top guys in the game. You can't really argue with that. Maybe you can argue some of the guys may have had a better season, whatever. That's a solid list, man. Stingley, Surtain, Humphrey, and Ward. That's a pretty solid list. You'll win games if those are your guys. And then the safeties now, Minkah Fitzpatrick is the lone free safety for the AFC, and then you've got Kyle Hamilton and Derwin James. Didn't really watch a lot of Derwin James this season. Don't really know what kind of season he had. Kyle Hamilton has been solid over the last 2 years. I don't know if this year was as good as last year, but nevertheless, he had a really good year last year. And like I told you, that's how things work there. On the NFC side, we all know about Kerby Joseph. You got hosed there. I don't want to go into at length the safety for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they put Brian Branch on. He had a great year. I guess they didn't want to put two guys on I don't know what the case may be. But the cornerbacks for the NFC are Jalen Johnson, Byron Murphy. Great to see him there. Former Cardinal, went over to Minnesota Vikings and had a really solid season. Great to see that recognized. Also great to see J.C. Horn on there. He's over there wallowing away in the Carolina Panthers franchise that is just at the bottom pits of the NFL. He put together a complete season, no injuries this year, and he's solid as always. So good to see him recognized there. And then Devon Witherspoon from the Seattle Seahawks. That's a case where the guy had a really great season last year. I don't remember if he was picked for the Pro Bowl last year, so this he didn't have as good of a season this year. All right, for whatever reason, a little bit of a sophomore jinx. I'm not saying it was a terrible season, but 2024 for Devon Witherspoon was not what 2023 was. All right, there was a difference in those two things. But nevertheless, he's on there, a solid player. Like I said, don't think he had the same season this year as he had last year. And then Xavier McKinney, that's a no doubter, even though he didn't end the season on fire like he did the beginning of the season. This guy was getting a pick a week for the first 6 or 7 weeks and was a solid player all season long. Your strong safeties are Buda Baker and, as I mentioned, Brian Branch. All right, those are your Pro Bowl rosters for the 2025 Pro Bowl. So let's talk now about the All Pro rosters. Now these tend to be a little bit more on point. All right, I think one day I really need to look up how the voting goes on this. If you're watching or listening to this and you happen to know exactly how the voting goes for All Pro as well as Pro Bowl, feel free to mention it down in the comments. I apologize for not knowing that. It's just not something that I'm really upon. Because as I told you, these whole award things, I'm not huge on them. So I haven't done the work there to dig in and find out. But your all pro cornerbacks are Derek Stingley and Pat Surtain. Very solid. These two guys are solid players and they had great years. Both of them had great years. Your slot cornerback is Marlon Humphrey. We saw him on the Pro Bowl roster. Another solid player. Didn't really dig into his numbers, but always around the football and tends to be in the mix one way or another. Your safeties are Kirby Joseph, so justice for Kirby Joseph, and Xavier McKinney. You can't really beat that at the safety position. These two guys had really, really great years. Kirby Joseph led the league in interceptions, and Xavier McKinney was probably pretty close there. So that's from the news desk. The stuff I want to really get into and talk about here is something that I've noticed. I think a lot of people have noticed it. If you've been playing college football over the last few years, you've probably noticed it yourself. And I don't know where we need to place the blame. You know, I think people like to know where the blame needs to be placed on things. But I'm talking about player development, especially at the Power 4 level. I also run gridironstuds.com. That has to do with recruiting at all positions. And I've been really trying to drive home this message to the youngsters that are coming out in high school now, because as we know, with the advent of the transfer portal, it has been more and more difficult for high school football players to get recruited, at least at the Power 4 level where all these guys want to go. And I'm trying to stress to them that Group of 5 football, FCS football, as well as even Division II football, is a great place for you to be right now because you can get developed as a player. You're more than likely going to have the same coach for your 3-4 years at that level. You're going to have pretty much the same teammates by and large, so there's a bonding there, and you can learn how to communicate, and there's just a lot more consistency there. And then at that level, typically a position coach is a guy that played that position and is there because he can develop talent, because they know that's kind of what they're getting there, as opposed to the Power 4 level. And I'm not saying this for every coach, every program at the Power 4 level, but what happens a lot at the Power 4 level is that they're bringing coaches on primarily because they can recruit. So a guy might be a C in developing players, actually getting guys to play at their tip top, but you can bring in A plus players, and more often than not, the programs, the head coaches are bringing on those guys that are the top flight recruiters. They may not have even played the position. I've seen guys be defensive back coaches that have never really been defensive back coaches before, but they can go into a living room and land a player. And so they end up being in that position. And, the guys that are there on the roster suffer a little bit with the development. This does help a guy like myself and others that are trainers because our job becomes that much more important. The off season for guys becomes that much more important, but it extends beyond that. As these seasons go on, there isn't a whole lot of individual period. There's It's funny that this podcast is called Indy Drills, but the individual period is starting to disappear. And not only is it getting shorter in the amount of time, the time in that individual period is getting eaten up by teaching the scheme. Whereas in the past, individual period was really all about technique, getting your footwork down, getting your eyes right, making sure you're in the proper position, you're using proper hand strikes and everything else. You're really honed in on your technique during that individual period. More and more, I hear it from players. I see it when I go to college campuses. I'm hearing it even from coaches that are forced to do this, that you're spending a decent amount of portion time of your individual period coaching over the scheme, going over how guys want to defend bunch that week, or where you need to be in your quarters coverage and things of that nature. And you're not really getting in on technique. If I could talk to my defensive coordinators out there, especially at the college level, but if you happen to be in high school and you don't have a big appreciation for your individual period, I'm just telling you this for defensive backs. This is really where you give guys the tools to execute your scheme. So I get it. A lot of guys want to attach their names, talking about coaches, they want to attach their name, their legacy, their brand to their scheme. And for them to do that, they feel like they need to really teach and like almost over teach their scheme. They want to run a lot of things and they want to cut the film on and show coaches, as whether they're talking to guys at a clinic or they're trying to get a better job somewhere. They really want to impress people with the different schematics that they've come up with on the field. And in doing so, they have expanded their play calls, their playbooks, and it bleeds into the parts of practice and in the player's career in which they need to develop the tools. So you're trying to build a house right now, and all these guys have is a hammer or maybe a screw. And it's not the best screw, it's not the best hammer, but you want a house built. And you're undoing yourself. You are not getting the most out of your scheme. Players don't have the tools. If you don't give your position coach, your DB coach, enough time to work the technique and drills that are going to make that player successful in your scheme, then you don't have a scheme. I'm here to tell you. You can keep trying to run different things. You can keep trying to be funky with your schematics and try to trick the offense, try to trick the quarterback and the guy on the other side of the field that's making calls. But if these guys don't have the tools, you're going to find that none of these things you're trying to run are going to be executed properly. So you don't really have a scheme. I would say if you find yourself pressed for time, coaches, I'm telling you this from experience, cut down some of what you want to call, and I know that's a very difficult thing for you to do. I know how it is. You draw up something and you just think that's really going to be great. On paper, it looks great. So you want to be able to run that and you want to be able to run this and all these things that you've come up with. I get it. I'm here to tell you, trust me. I'm telling you this as a former player. I'm telling you this as a former coach. Cut down some of what you're doing and allow the coaches and the players to get some development in terms of technique. If a guy's eyes aren't in the right place, if a guy can't backpedal or he can't manage himself at the line of scrimmage, he can't run soft press technique, he can't play hard press technique, he can't get his eyes in the right place, it's not going to matter what it is that you run. If he can't bail properly, okay, if he can't read two, if he can't get out of his breaks and go jump a pass that's being thrown and get turnovers, it's going to be very difficult for you to look good. It's going to be very difficult for your unit to succeed. You're better off running something smaller that's less for them to learn. They're going to be faster, all right, if they're not out there constantly thinking, and then their eyes are going to be in the right place, their footwork is going to be great, and they're going to get their hands on the football. Man, sometimes simplicity allows these guys to move faster. Not sometimes, a lot of times, right? But I know you don't want to be so simplistic. One of the biggest fears I think coordinators have, especially on the defensive side, is just being too basic with your team and someone is coming out there and kicking your rear end with what they're coming up with, and you don't have something schematically to combat it, right? That's like thieves breaking into your house and you don't have a gun to combat their assault on your territory and your family. I get that feeling. All right. You're just going to have to be really wise about that. But the flip side of that is having all this stuff is thieves breaking into your home. You've got 50 guns and you can't make a decision as to which one of these guns you want to pull out. These guys kick in the bedroom door and put a hole in your head. All right. Sometimes you've just got to, or you got 50 guns and you don't really know how to aim and shoot these things because you've tried to shoot so many of these guns and you just haven't had enough time to really manage and understand your weapon and shoot it correctly and take care of the threat. Okay. That's the best analogy right now off the top of my head that I can give, man. Hey, cut down the amount of weapons and so you can shoot that thing straight when someone breaks in and wants to attack you. Because as a trainer, I'm almost like a therapist. I'm a safe place for players to come and tell me stuff that's going on with their team. And the predominant complaint that I am getting is that guys aren't developing. They are not getting enough Indy time. They're not getting taught enough technique. Sometimes they're out there in that field and they feel kind of naked and they just don't feel like they have the tools that they need to go and play the various coverages that you're trying to run. Another thing too is for you position coaches, a lot of times you guys are running drills that don't exactly pertain to the coverages that are being run. You're running drills because you think this is a good drill and it's going to be good for the DB and it'll be good for him to know that. Great, but does it fit the actual scheme that you guys are running? So if you're doing a bunch of man stuff in your Indy period, but you guys are predominantly a quarters team, you're wasting those guys' time. And your Indy period is so precious anyway. It's never as long as we want it to be, right, coaches? That period's never as long as we want it to be. You don't have time to waste. You have to be so efficient with that. A, your drills need to be streamlined so you can get a bunch of reps in a short amount of time. B, the drills have to pertain to what it is exactly you guys are doing schematically so that they can play those coverages with the proper technique. And C, it takes so many reps for guys to really get things down. Some guys will get things faster than others, but by and large, first they've got to be able to get the technique right, and then you got to keep doing it so that they continue to do it right. So you don't have time to waste in your Indy period, so make sure your drills match the scheme. And don't be afraid to tell your guys to stay after and do 5 or 10 minutes of work. And that 5 or 10 minutes of work after practice usually should be on the most important thing that your guys need to be able to do in you guys' particular scheme. So if you're a man heavy press scheme, those guys should be working on their kick slide or soft press technique at the line of scrimmage for that 5 or 10 minutes after practice. That should be done daily, daily, daily. They do that every day. They're getting an extra hour on the most important part for them in your scheme. That's what they should be working on in those 5 or 10 minutes afterwards. Not always, something they couldn't get right today. They can do that pre-practice, all right? They can go do that at home, whatever. Or you can work it more in the Indy period. You have got to have those guys spend that post-practice time on the most important thing that's in your scheme. They've got to be good. If we're not good at anything else, we're good at this one thing right here that's going to allow us to play the way that we want to play, the way that the coordinator wants to play, all right? All right, so that's my talk on player development and the disappearing Indy. It'd be nice, coordinators, if you can let your DB coaches get their Indy periods back and find another walkthrough period, add another period somewhere in there where you talk about your scheme or run less stuff out there so you don't even have to have that. And you can keep your periods in practice the way that they are, but you must give your DB coach the ability to give his guys first, your coach will feel fulfilled. He'll feel confident about what he's putting out there in the field. Your players are going to feel confident because if they're out there being asked to do some things that they know they haven't had a chance to work on or they haven't been taught, they're not going to be confident players. And I am here to tell you, if you didn't know, your players' confidence in the secondary is almost everything. It might be the most important thing. I've seen guys that really couldn't play that were confident they could play and make plays. It's just like that. All right. There's a lot that goes through our head back there as the final defense. And one of those things that doesn't need to be in there is doubt. So if they've got the proper technique and coaching, they can operate your scheme. They feel confident when they roll out there on the field. All right. It's time to go into the mailbag. And I'm always happy to do this. I know guys are out there playing. They're struggling with a certain technique or something just keeps getting them beat. I know what that's like. It can be extremely frustrating. And so I always like going into the mailbag to be able to help guys out. If you want to get some help from me, you can always send me an email to cwilson@alliesdbcamp.com with your question or whatever it is that may be bothering you or you can't get done out there on the field. And I will answer that question for you. And who knows, I might pick your question to come up the next Indy Drills podcast, like this question I got right here from Dexter from North Carolina. Dexter says, my problem is that I'm usually in good position, but I get beat because I don't look for the ball. I think I will miss the ball if I look. Dexter, you're not alone. If you're a fan right now watching this, you know you've yelled at your television screen, whether it's for your favorite college football team or your favorite NFL team, and you're pissed off that the DB just didn't turn his head around and look. It's even worse nowadays because back in the days, deep balls were moonshots. Quarterbacks would put air under it and just, have the wide receiver run up under it. Nowadays, these quarterbacks have gotten rather bold. They will throw line drive throws right by the DB's head, knowing that he won't look, and it goes and missiles right into the wide receiver's hands. Hey, look, you think you're yelling? I'm yelling too. Guys have got to get their head around. The name of the game nowadays is get the football. And the only way really that's going to happen is if you turn your head around. You've got to get your head around. All right, so Dexter, I think the biggest problem here that I've noticed, especially if you're a young guy and you've kind of just played defense all your life, your entire football career, so you just haven't caught enough footballs. Sometimes guys get into their practices, even in their drill sessions, and it's just a whole lot of footwork, and you don't catch the football a lot. You certainly don't catch it as much as the wide receivers. So you don't feel comfortable turning your head around and tracking a football and making a play on it while also trying to pay attention to a receiver that's right next to you. That gives you quite a bit of anxiety. So rather than put yourself in that situation, you'd rather just look at the receiver's face, look at his hands, and then put your hands up in front of his face, or try to play around with his hands and the guy ends up catching it anyway. Or the more frequent thing that happens in that situation is that there's a pass interference penalty. And that can be deflating for you, for the team, for everyone involved. You will avoid a lot more pass interference penalties if you just get your head around. So the number one thing you got to do is catch more passes in practice. And I'm not just talking about, playing catch with someone who's 10, 15 yards away from you. I'm talking about the kind of catch where you are running down the field and you're 30, 40, 50 yards away from the person throwing the ball, and you turn your head and look and find the ball. You need those types of you need that type of practice. Okay, you need practice with doing that. So I would say this to you: if you don't have someone on your team, if you guys as a group of DBs or the people you train with don't do that, I would say stay after with wide receivers. Maybe get a quarterback to stay after practice with you. Or you know what? Maybe you spend a little bit of a portion of your off-season training as a wide receiver. So go find a wide receiver camp in your area. Bet you never thought about that. You play DB, but go to a wide receiver camp. So A, you can work on your ball skills and route running, and B, you can kind of learn what it is these guys think, what these guys go through. Listen, it can pay off for you big. But the biggest thing you're going to get out of that is catching the football more often. You're going to get more comfortable with catching the football. You're going to get more comfortable with judging the football that's thrown 40 or 50 yards downfield, seeing it, tracking it, and making the catch. Another thing is this also, though, if you're going to be working on catching the football, the way that you catch and the way that you track the football is not going to be the same as wide receivers, okay? I understand as DBs, we do need to keep our eyes on that receiver longer. Then we're going to look back later than a wide receiver. And when we do that, that means the football is already in the air, and that can be a little problematic for us. We don't get to see the full flight of the football. We don't get the chance to see the ball out of the quarterback's hand and judge it for that entire flight. A lot of times we're looking up, the ball is in the air, and we've got to quickly make a decision as to where that ball is. Is it deep? Is it short? Is it to the outside? Is it to the inside? You've got to get some practice doing that. So you definitely need drills, A, where you're running down the field and the ball is thrown and you don't look right away. You could do a drill where the person throwing the ball throws it, and after it leaves his hand, the person says ball. So you turn your head around and you see the ball late and you judge the ball late, you get a lot of practice doing that. All of this being done by you for an extended period of time, if you do a bunch of this in this off season, you're just going to end up being more comfortable judging the ball. You're going to be more comfortable catching the ball. And now that's going to make it easier for you to turn your head around when you're running down the field with the wide receiver. I tell my guys, if you're hip to hip with a wide receiver running down the field, turn your head around. If you're a step behind, and provided there isn't a really big gap in speed between the two of you, even a step behind, turn your head around. Why do I say that? Because most of your quarterbacks aren't making perfect in stride throws. Three things can happen when that pass is thrown. It can be underthrown, it can be thrown right on the money, and it can be overthrown. Two of those things are wins for us if you turn your head around. The ball's underthrown and your head is around, you're going to get an interception. The ball is overthrown, no one's going to catch it, and that's a win for us. Now, if the ball is put right on the money, hey, I'm here to tell you, whether you're looking back or not, that ball is going to probably hit the wide receiver's hand, so there isn't a whole lot you can do. All right? Get your head around. Unless you've been like poorly beaten, get your head around. If you're even or a stride behind the guy, just get used to doing that. Again, your confidence in doing that is going to come from catching a lot of footballs this offseason. So make sure that you do that. You need the confidence. The confidence will get your head around. And once you grab an interception or two doing that, you are going to be more than pleased with the results. And then you're just going to feel a lot more confident doing it. So you need the blind ball drills. And what I mean by blind ball drills is you don't see the ball thrown. You see it in flight. That's what I mean by blind ball drills. I've got several ball drills in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. That will definitely help you with that. If you care to join that, or anyone listening to this cares to join the All Eyes DB Camp members area, I have a nice little library in there of drills, and some of them are, in fact, ball drills that you guys can benefit from. So check that out there. But Dexter from North Carolina, that's really how you help yourself with this situation. You're not alone. A lot of DBs, I would say, in high school, a majority of the DBs are like that. They don't want to look for the football. And a lot of times, I have noticed this comes a lot from guys that have just played on the defensive side of the ball all their lives. Guys that played on the offense, that have been catching passes in their football career, they don't have a problem looking for the football. You've got to get to a point where you are not afraid to look for the football. And the only way that's going to happen is you catch a lot of footballs this off season. All right, moving along in our show here, I want to get to the main topic here, and that is about being a complete defensive back. All right, a lot of guys like to focus on just maybe just one thing. And down here in South Florida, a lot of guys really just love to work on their man-to-man coverage. They just, they focus in on that because down here being a man means you play man-to-man coverage, and that's just kind of how this thing works. That might be different in other areas where guys just really want to focus on one particular thing, but you can't do that, all right? You have to spend time being a complete defensive back. One of the things I don't know that Darrelle Revis gets credit enough for was that he was a complete defensive back. Darrelle Revis would tackle, he could play off man, he could play press. He could do any number of things out there. He went to Tampa one year and played cover two predominantly. They were a cover two football team, and he thrived in that. Obviously, with the Jets, he was a big-time man corner, and that's where he made his hay, but he was a complete defensive back. And if you really want to continue to move up through the ranks as a player, you're going to also need to become a complete defensive back. So I just want to talk to you guys about what that actually looks like, because now that we're up on camp season, I think this is a good thing for us to suggest. You guys are going to be going out on the camp circuit. You're going to be trying to impress coaches, and one of the best ways that you're going to do that is by being a complete defensive back, checking off all the boxes. So the first thing you're going to need to have as a defensive back that's trying to be a complete defensive back, this is the most important thing, is good eye discipline. This really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. The name of my company here is All Eyes DB Camp. But I want to dive into why that matters. I always say you couldn't play this position blind. Even with an eye patch on, you're just not going to get things done the way that they need to get done. However, you could play a defensive back with a sprained ankle. I've seen guys do that. I did it for, an entire playoff season in high school. You can play with a broken hand. We've seen guys play with a cast on. This pretty much highlights how critical your eyes are. Most mistakes you're going to make as a defensive back are going to be as a result of your eyes just being in the wrong place. When I introduce a drill to my guys in training sessions, I give clear instructions on where I want their eyes to be. If they struggle to follow that instruction, it's a red flag. Now, it's not a deal breaker, but it does indicate a longer road to reaching that athlete's potential. You've got to train your eyes by focusing on the correct spot in each and every drill that you do. No exceptions. You can't just have your eyes wherever in a drill. Be purposeful with your eyes in every drill that you do. Discipline in this area builds consistency and it prevents costly errors. Obviously, the next thing you need to have is quick feet. All right. As they say, slow feet don't eat at defensive back. While other positions might allow for slower footwork, defensive back is not one of those positions. I hate to break that to you if you didn't know. Your contact with the ground must be constant, must be consistent, and rapid. Now, quick feet can cover mistakes. They can close gaps faster, and they can make offenses pay when the ball is not where it needs to be. Now, a great way to evaluate your foot quickness is with a simple backpedal drill. Slow backpedals rarely translate into quick feet during other movements. A guy with a slow backpedal is usually he's got slow feet in every other drill that I'm going to do that involves footwork. Your crossover run's kind of slow, your hip flips are slow. A DB with elite top end speed but slow feet is going to struggle consistently with separation, believe that or not. All right, so we see guys go to that combine and run 4.3s and 4.2s, and then we maybe don't hear from them anymore. They just don't have the quick feet and maybe some football know-how, but they don't have the quick feet. I'd much rather have a guy with some quick feet over a guy that's a 10-200 guy if his feet are going to be slow. All right. A lot of what we do is not just straight line running. You're going to change direction. You're going to go left and right. Got to have quick feet. The next thing is solid change of direction, which kind of plays into the quick feet thing, why you need the quick feet. Quick feet don't always guarantee the ability to change direction efficiently. I've seen athletes with exceptional back pedals who struggle to transition out of them. That's another thing. A quick back pedal is good. You got to be able to transition out of that thing. Now, similarly, some players excel running in one direction, but they can't get it together when you're asked to reverse into another direction on a moment's notice. Fortunately, this is one of the easier things to improve. All right, provided that the athlete has basic strength and quickness, we can fix that. Proper body positioning is often the key to quick direction changes. Sometimes let their upper body lean out over their hips or their feet get a little too wide and things like that. I use the W drill just to evaluate this skill. It involves breaking out of your back pedal, breaking out of a shuffle, breaking out of a crossover run. And athletes should work on these movements ahead of camps to shine during evaluations. Work that W drill. I know it's an old drill, but the drill might as well be a new drill because it applies. Okay, and work it not just your back pedal, but your shuffle, your crossover run, and all of that. The next thing you're going to need, and this kind of goes to what I just talked about in the last segment, but that is quality ball skills. Being in position is great. It's great to always be around, but it's meaningless if you can't make a play on the ball. All right. Nowadays, we need to take the ball away. It's all about offense now, anyway. We need to take that ball away and give it back to our offense so the quarterbacks and wide receivers can shine. Okay. Just knocking a ball down all the time is not going to be enough. Eventually, you need to start taking the ball away. And yeah, you could be the king of PBUs. That's cool, but we need to take the ball away. All right. PBUs half an opportunity denied. Okay, if you break a pass up on second down, they get a third down, and then they convert a third down, we're still out on the field. All right, the name of the game, as I said today in the game of football, is takeaways. A strong ability to track the ball, position yourself, and complete the catch is a superpower at defensive back. And I'm telling you, quarterbacks really fear guys like that. So it's a skill that earns offers, awards like we talked about, gets you on the Pro Bowl, gets you on the All-Pro team, and it gets big contracts. Okay, being able to take that ball away and having good ball skills. I evaluate ball skills with a series of drills, catching passes while running towards me. That will kind of tell me about a guy's confidence in his hands and how good his hands are. Those end up being tough catches to make. I try having them run away at an angle or straight away. That tells me more about their hands. And then also doing blind ball drills, as I mentioned in the last segment, where a guy doesn't see the ball thrown. He has to judge it rather quickly, coming right at him, and locate, or deep ones where they got to locate the ball in flight. These are excellent for assessing this skill. So if your ball skills are average or below, get busy sharpening those things right now. Dropping balls during drills will hurt your confidence and your evaluation if you're at a camp, all right? Or if you're fighting for a position against another player and you're trying to start this year. If your guy is just dropping the football, it looks bad, okay? So don't cut out that part of your training. You want to be able to catch the football. The final thing you need if you're going to be a confident, if you're going to be a complete DB, you're going to need confidence and a football IQ. Okay. I've combined these two because they're often connected. All right. Confidence comes from knowing what to do. All right. It's hard to be confident if you don't know what to do out on the field. Some guys can fake it. Some guys are psychopaths. They can go out there and absolutely know nothing and be confident. That's a small percentage of people. By and large, people are largely, the confidence comes from knowing what to do. All right. When you have all the answers to the test, the pressure of the moment feels manageable. All right. Defensive backs operate in high pressure situations. Do we not? Okay. It's high pressure back there. When we mess up, it's a big deal. We're on an island a lot of times out there. So if we're not on an island, we're in open space, or we're the last line of defense. We miss a tackle, we miss a ball, 50, 60-yard touchdown, it's a big play. Athletes who study the game thrive in these moments because they anticipate plays and they react without hesitation. Excuse me there. So during camp, when I've worked camps, I evaluate the confidence of players during one-on-one situations. That's where I kind of learn a guy's confidence right there. A DB's technique and demeanor matter more to me than the outcome of a rep, to be honest. I don't often take a lot from the result of a one-on-one rep. I judge the technique, I judge a guy's confidence, and there are a number of things that I'm judging there. I don't always judge the result. I know one-on-ones is an offensive drill. So I focus on their football IQ, how well they understand the basic concepts, and how quickly they adapt to the new information that they may be getting. Being knowledgeable, curious, and a fast learner does lead to long-term success in this game. All right, if you're trying to play at that next level, hey, your physical skills diminish as you get older. What keeps you in the game is your mind, all right? Your mind and your ability to process information, your ability to understand what the offense is trying to do to you, and your full knowledge of the defense that you're running in where everyone is supposed to be. So being knowledgeable, curious, and a fast learner does really lead to your long-term success. So these are the 5 most critical skills I evaluate in defensive backs at camps when I've worked camps before, and I know, most coaches, these are the 5 most important things. These are the things that they're evaluating. So while they're not the only factors, they do allow me to make the most accurate forecast of a player's future, especially when I only have a couple hours to work with a guy. So think about these 5 things that I talked about. Really think about how good you are in all these areas. And if you have some weaknesses, you want to get busy on fixing those things right now, not just for the camps, but for the next football season that's coming up, where your team's going to be relying on you, needing you to be out there, needing you to be solid, needing you to make plays. And if you help your team win football games, a lot of great things happen for you after that. All right. That's it for the Indy Drills podcast, man. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed it. Again, if you enjoyed the show, go ahead, like. All right. That really does help. And share the show. Share it for your friends out there. And then also, if you're listening to this in podcast form, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything of that nature, hey man, go ahead and rank the show. Go ahead and give me a rating here. It really does help the podcast, helps it grow. Go ahead and give it a good 5 stars if that's how you feel. It really does help the show grow, get more people coming in and listening to the Indy Drills podcast. Of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, man, anything that I've talked about here, I love feedback. You guys drop some comments here, and I do read the comments. Helps me provide better content for you guys down the road. And it's also a good area for us to have some discussion. Finally, man, 101 DB tips. I talked about it in the beginning of the show. Definitely a book that every defensive back should have. Definitely a book for coaches too. A lot of stuff in here that you can use to coach your players. And then also, man, you've got to get into the All Eyes DB Camp members area. Like I said, it's all new. I have over 200 videos in there with drills, workouts for guys too. All right, workouts for guys that you can use this off season to improve your skills, as well as technique breakdowns, analyzing different strategies. I explain coverages in there. I've got some teach tapes in there. I've got a library. I have quizzes in there. All right, those are great. Guys really love the quizzes, so I quiz you on different coverages in there. And then you have the ability to go and learn the coverages if you didn't do too well on the quiz. And then we also have the ability to have discussions in this brand new All Eyes DB Camp members area. Anyone can post anything in there, and we have a discussion on it. And of course, it's really easy to contact me in there. You can comment on any post that I put up, as well as the chat feature that's in there. I've been able to help guys with little individual problems that they are experiencing through the chat feature. It's a real seamless thing, run through Mighty Networks. So it is a great thing, man. If you can make the investment of the All Eyes DB Camp members area plus the book, I am here to tell you there's just no way you're not going to be a better player next season. Absolutely no way that can happen. These two things combined are a superpower. So I'll have the links to them in the description down below. Once again, though, appreciate you guys being here. Love your feedback. So drop some comments down there. Give the show a ranking, like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff. I got homework for you. You guys go do that. And I appreciate it. Until the next time, All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.